GamingBolt presents things Bungie should not include in Destiny 2. Bungie's Destiny has been a curious beast over the years. It's received acclaim for its gameplay and FPS mechanics. The progression systems and mission design has improved significantly since launch. However, it still lacks the magic that really defined a shooter series like Halo or an MMO like World of Warcraft. Granted, it's occupying a very uncomfortable space between MMO and FPS, suffered from its fair share of design problems and delays, and wrestled with less than ideal development tools. There is still hope for Destiny 2 though, especially with a recent set of rumors that pegged it as taking place on Saturn, featuring a better architecture to facilitate quicker and more substantial updates, busier towns, and more activities, and so on. Again, these are all just rumors and should be taken with a grain of salt, but it gets us thinking about the things we'd like to see in Destiny 2 and, more importantly, the things Bungie should avoid throwing in. Skill-based matchmaking. Enough is enough, and it's time for a change. Skill-based matchmaking has been a thorn in many a Destiny player's side, more than the actual thorn, to be honest. It's not that it matches you with players who are at the same level or better than you, thus pushing you to try your hardest. No, it's that its search parameters search worldwide to make this happen. In Destiny 2, there should be an unranked and ranked playlist with the latter emphasizing ranks, but not completely sacrificing connections. Meanwhile, unranked playlists could work on finding similar skill levels, but emphasizing connection quality above all. Unless Destiny 2 removes P2P matchmaking altogether and goes with dedicated servers, we don't see such extreme SBMM being the best route for the Crucible. Horde mode in-game. More people enjoyed rerunning the older raids rather than enduring Prison of Elders in Year 1. With the April update, more players enjoy running King's Fall at Heroic than running Challenge of the Elders. We don't mind Horde activities per se, but it should be an optional choice for players, especially when Bungie isn't going to bring back True Blue Firefight anytime soon, though Archon's Forge could be close. One of the best choices made with the April update was allowing faction packages and strike loot to drop at max light level, thus allowing players to progress without relying on Prison of Elders. Thus far, in terms of mission design, the developer is on the right path. We just hope there's no sudden urge to make a Horde activity the in-game focus at any point in Destiny 2. Horde-style mission objectives. The game was infamous for every single mission type being the same thing: scan an object or a door, fight off 3 waves of enemies, progress forward, repeat. Subsequent expansions like House of Wolves and The Taken King were better with this, but Bungie's obsession with Prison of Elders didn't exactly whet our appetite for more Horde-style nonsense. The point we're making with this is that story-based missions should tell a story. Remember ascending to the highest point in Cosmodrome in Cade's Stash, or revisiting the Vault of Glass in House of Wolves and the Paradox mission. Bungie is clearly capable of telling great stories and weaving missions around the same. PvP weapon balance affecting PvE. It started with Vex Mythoclast being nerfed because, well, there isn't much point to PvPing against a gun that melts you in 3 or 4 shots. Then the auto rifle nerfs came, followed swiftly by hand cannons. Shotguns received PvE buffs and nerfs, range nerfs, you name it. Fusion rifles fell quickly from the beginning, and while it may have all created some sort of balance in PvP, it hasn't helped PvE one bit. Ask players who suffer from too much flinch while sniping enemies or limited special ammo overall. If Destiny 2 needs to achieve anything with its weapon balance, then it's to keep PvP and PvE separate. Also, the excuse Guardians won't understand the difference between weapon damage and performance in PvP versus PvE, that this was a legitimate excuse Bungie offered, is still mind-boggling. Storytelling through only lore. Bungie is somewhat known for wanting to tell the best stories through in-game lore. However, the Halo series still told a fairly confident story with the in-game missions. Destiny's best stories seem trapped in the Grimoire. Maybe the Book of Sorrows wouldn't have worked out from a gameplay perspective, but surely there should have been some way to offer missions on the scale of The Last Word, Thorn, the Battle of Twilight Gap, and various other tales. The current problem right now is to offer typical missions with fairly standard objectives and let the Grimoire tell the tale behind it. Want to learn more about SIVA from Rise of Iron? Not happening unless you read the Grimoire. Hopefully Destiny 2 features a strong story and memorable side plots to go along with its lore. Lore is supposed to add to the main story, not substitute for it, because the central story is so barren and unmemorable. Terrible raid weapons. Rise of Iron actually features some strong raid weapons this time around, which is amazing when you consider that the last few PvE in-game activities haven't offered many good weapons. King's Fall had some boring weapons, and the hollowed versions didn't offer much more than a paint change. House of Wolves weapons in Year 1 didn't live up to Crota's End or Vault of Glass, not that Bungie made much effort to try. Thus far, we're enjoying what Rise of Iron has to offer. Will this trend continue? One can certainly hope. Lack of elemental primaries. A very interesting question was posed by a fan recently. Why do the enemies have elemental primaries but the Guardians don't? We're motivated to say that Vex traveled back in time and removed them from existence to make things more difficult, but it's an excellent point. Elemental primaries are no longer a thing because maybe they made content too easy, especially when it came to Nightfalls. Then again, the solution was to seemingly increase enemy burn damage, nerf Guardian burn damage, and introduce gear that reduces burn damage, but only by a bit. Again, what's the problem with having these during raids, especially when the mechanics are the most difficult aspect? Destiny 2's reintroduction of elemental primaries could be limited to exotics, much like Zalo Supercell, or introduced as consumables for current weapons. Either way, put them back in the sequel. Fetch quests. Designing quests is hard. Even with The Witcher 3 The Wild Hunt. You'll come across the same mechanics for smaller quests and monster hunts every now and then, though CD Projekt Red found other ways to distinguish one quest from another. It's just a limiting factor of game design. However, in a shared world shooter like Destiny, why is our all-powerful Guardians relegated to gathering resources for missions? There's even a postmaster whose job it is to recover engrams dropped on the ground. How difficult in lore would it be for the postmaster to, gather up those resources instead? Granted, this does not limit typical kinds of quests you could do in MMOs, but there's plenty to replace them with. Kill missions, assassinations, stealth missions, tower defense-like scenarios, dialogue-driven missions and interactions, testing the new field weapons, and if Bungie actually does incorporate space combat, there's a whole new range of missions that could open up for Destiny 2. Our point is that when even World of Warcraft has cut down on fetch quests, they've outlived their use in a AAA MMO shooter. Gated off content. Destiny could take a few lessons from Diablo 3, which featured different difficulties for obtaining solid gear. The current problem with Destiny is that in order to gain the highest light level gear, you need to do in-game activities. This is a problem because many of the activities like raids, Challenge of the Elders, and Trial of Osiris don't have matchmaking. We're not saying matchmaking is required, but what about in-game LFG options at least? The point is that solo players should be able to gain some form of linear progression that's quick enough without having to play with other people. And no, we're not talking about strikes which cap out at 365 light and force you to grind mercilessly with 3 of coins, exotic engrams, and factions packages for slight increases. The really challenging content which requires more than one person could mitigate this with more loot drops all around. Barren social spaces. If rumors are to be believed, Destiny 2 will have more livelier areas where you can queue for activities and still continue to explore. These social spaces will apparently have more things for you to do and people to talk to, which is a great new addition considering how barren the current game is. Case in point, the tower is the only place with a sizable amount of NPCs, and some of those lose their usefulness over time. Remember the Speaker, one of the central characters? The Reef and Iron Temples aren't much better, especially since there are no vendors in the latter and no faction vendors in the former. We're not saying faction vendors have to be present in every social space for Destiny 2, although it wouldn't hurt since it means you don't have to backtrack to the tower every time you need something. But there should be more than just 1 or 2 story NPCs or bounty vendors. What features do you hope Bungie avoids implementing in Destiny 2? Let us know in the comments below.
And that wraps it up. What are your thoughts about this? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and share it on Twitter and Facebook. And why not consider subscribing? We upload some really cool videos almost every day. Thank you for watching this video and happy gaming!